the idea that somehow the United States should force Ukraine to go down this road, and it won't give security guarantees or security assistance unless Zelensky says this, I think that is a very bad way of going about it.
Now, the Kremlin is saying that President Zelensky of Ukraine could go to Moscow to meet with Putin if the Ukrainian president was ready to do that. I think you probably will have come to the conclusion we shouldn't hold your breath for that to happen. The peace talks between Russia, Ukraine and America will start up again on Sunday in the United Arab Emirates. And meanwhile, the Financial Times is reporting that America have taken the position of saying that Ukraine must cede more unconquered territory if there's to be a ceasefire deal, which means handing over territory in the Donbas region of Ukraine, which is currently in Ukrainian possession, just given, as it were, to Russia without a fight as part of the price for a ceasefire deal. Charles Kupchan is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and is also a former Obama presidency advisor. Charles, welcome to the programme.
Good to be back with you, John.
Thank you for rejoining us. Give me your thoughts on this report. It's there in the Financial Times. It's been picked up more widely. You can read it in the Times, of course, about now the White House looking, maybe pushing Ukraine, give up that unconquered territory in the Donbas if you want to get America involved in giving a security guarantee to a peacekeeping force. What do you make of that?
I think what's going on here behind the scenes is that there is in the offing a plan that would enable Zelensky to sell to the Ukrainian people some kind of territorial concession, whether it's going back to the borders of Donbas, as Putin has asked for, or some other kind of withdrawal in return for an American and European security guarantee, which is basically saying, okay, we don't want to give up land, but we're going to give it up, and in return, we will have perpetual peace. We will have backing of the United States and our European allies. And I think in some ways, what might be happening here is creating an argument that Zelensky can make to his public to make these territorial concessions. But, big but here, the idea that somehow the United States should force Ukraine to go down this road, and it won't give security guarantees or security assistance unless Zelensky says this, I think that is a very bad way of going about it. And then the second is, what is the security guarantee going to look like? Is it real? Is it tangible? Is it going to be ratified by the Senate? There are still a lot of things about this broader deal that remain quite opaque.
It is a fascinating line of thinking, Charles, and I know this is theoretical, and I know we're in the business of mind reading here, but can you conceive of Volodymyr Zelensky making a sacrifice like that of Ukrainian territory, which is presently, as it were, in Ukrainian hands, giving that to Russia as the price for a ceasefire deal?
I don't think that it is out of the question. And I say that in part because Ukraine is not in great shape right now, right? They've had a terrible corruption crisis. They're running out of manpower. People are leaving the country because they don't want to get sent to the front. Trump, at least right now, is not providing American aid. He's making the Europeans buy it. And so, you know, if you're Zelensky and you're getting bombed every night, you're saying to yourself, time is not on my side. I don't want this to go on for the next several years. How am I going to end this? Well, maybe I'm going to have to make territorial concessions, even though I don't like it.
Yes.
But I'm going to be able to say to the Ukrainian people, the 80% of Ukraine that is free is defensible, secure, prosperous, and America has our back.
I mean, and as far as one can say this, Charles, about Ukraine, where such things as opinion polling is a difficult exercise to undertake, there's strong opposition to the idea of handing over to Russia unconquered territory, which would mean that the coming talks, there are talks planned for the weekend in Abu Dhabi. On that analysis, those talks would seem to be little more than going through the motions, not very meaningful. And maybe that's reinforced, Charles, what do you think, by some news just dropping now while we're speaking, This is Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, who says there might be a US presence in the Ukraine talks in Abu Dhabi this weekend, but it won't be Witkoff and Kushner. It won't be Steve Witkoff. It will not be Jared Kushner. Does that not just support the idea that America is not investing an awful lot of capital idea in these weekend talks?
Well, it's a good thing that Russians and Ukrainians are finally talking to each other. That has to happen if we're going to get a peace deal, because they're the two parties that eventually have to say yes. But it doesn't look like we are nearing the finish line on both sides. You know, we don't yet have an indication, as you just were explaining, that Zelensky is ready to make those painful compromises. And I get it, right? Many Ukrainians have died defending that very territory. Yes. That territory is fortified. It's got all kinds of fortifications to stop the Russians from coming. The Ukrainians don't just want to hand over that land. And we just don't know whether Putin is serious, right? This conversation has been going on with Trump really almost for the full course of his first year in office. There is not yet a single sign that Putin is ready to end this war. In fact, he keeps coming. Yes. Lavrov said just recently, we want to get rid of the Nazi regime in Kyiv. That means toppling the government and winning the war.
Yeah. So, Charles, when you say there's no indication that Putin is ready to strike a deal, it may be more accurate to say there's every indication that he's not at all interested in striking a deal. The attacks are going on with full force. There was an attack on a passenger train, I think, most recently. He wants to keep on fighting and gather whatever advantage he can at this stage of the war, which could go on still for an indefinite period.
I agree with that. And, you know, one has to simply conclude that it's in his interests to as Trump says it, tap Trump along, i.e. play the game of diplomacy and then launch 600 drones as soon as you hang up the phone with Trump.
Yes.
Right? Because then you look like the peacemaker, you look like you're trying to end the war, but you never really give up your maximalist war aims, which is to turn Ukraine into a vassal state.
For those, Charles, who would wish to see the President of the United States more squarely in the corner of Ukraine, more squarely on the side of, to put it very simply, the fight for freedom, what on earth do you make of the sight now of a portrait being hung in the White House of President Trump and Vladimir Putin side by side? And this picture, by the way, hanging above a portrait of the President Trump and his grandchild.
It's just plain weird. I mean, why you would want to put in the White House a picture of a president who is on a nightly basis killing Ukrainians and destroying a country, I don't know. My guess is what's going on in Trump's mind is that he wants to see himself as the great peacemaker. He wants to see himself as the man who reached out to Putin. They had the face-to-face meeting in Alaska. He seems very intent on making this effort to end the war, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in Gaza, whether it is somewhere else, a key part of his legacy. That's the only thing that I can think of that would motivate what seems to be a very off-tone move.
Can I just ask you this in the minute or so that we have left? As you can imagine, we're watching closely the visit taking place now of our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, in Beijing. He's meeting President Xi in Beijing tomorrow. Now, what is your take on the way that's going to be viewed by the Trump administration? I mean, their view of dealing with Xi and with Beijing was made pretty clear with that warning of a tariff attack on Canada. How do you think they will see this?
You know, unlike the Biden administration, which was much more ideological and got upset when European leaders would go to China, I don't think the Trump administration is going to have a big problem with it, in part because Trump himself is going to go to China, apparently in April. He wants a trade deal. Yeah. He wants to see China as a player and more integrated. He wants to lever the playing field. He's right to say that China is taking advantage of all of us. But this effort to kind of get more tentacles into China is consistent with Trump's strategy. So I don't think he has a problem with it. The one comment I would say coming off of the last week, John, is that there are those who are saying, oh, this is all about Greenland. This is all about Mark Carney's speech, that it's game over for the Atlantic Alliance. And so the Europeans have to deal with the Chinese and fashion trade deals with other people because the partnership with America is over. I think that's premature. And I think Europeans should diversify, broaden their portfolios. But the Atlantic Alliance is going through a rough patch. But let's not get premature here and call it game over.